Great. Well, it looks like it's 6:30, so we'll get started. I see Cito's on the line, so I think our community center friends are tapping in. So yeah, welcome everybody to our March NPA meeting. If people on Zoom could generally keep yourselves muted just for sound quality, that would be great. But yeah, welcome. My name is Molly. I'm a steering committee member from Ward 3. And we'll just go through and call out the other steering committee members that are on the call. Patrick, do you want to start off? What ward are you in, Patrick?
Oh, Ward 2.
Tony, you want to go?
Yeah, sure. Hi, Ward 3, Tony Reddington.
Thanks, Tony. Jess?
Jess Hyman, Ward 3.
Great. And I don't know if any steering committee members are on in the community center, but we also have Charlie Gioni from Ward 3, Barbara from Ward 3, Kevin from Ward 2, and Mayumi from Ward 2. So we have a great team. If anyone out there is interested in joining us, we would really welcome more steering committee members. We're always looking to have more ideas, more assistance, and especially people from Ward 2 would be awesome. Right now we have three Ward 2 steering committee members, and we could really use a few more. So please shoot us an email if you're interested, or talk to one of us, and we'd be glad to share what it's like to be a steering committee member. We're always interested in additional agenda items. If folks have ideas, please send us an email or request a slot from via the Cito website. They have a submission form that goes directly to our email, so we can consider it for the next agenda. Our next meeting is April 14th, and recordings of all meetings can be found on YouTube and on CCTV's website. So please check them out. Jess, do you want to give an update on the community grants?
Sure, I'd be happy to. Thanks, Molly. So as folks know, we had a community grant round where we invited individuals and groups to submit ideas for projects that would increase community engagement, support the community, support the NPA, and generally do good things in our neighborhood. And we had some great applications, and we're really excited to announce that we were able to give funding to all the groups that applied. And so the final funding allocation is $1,000 each for Laboratory B for the Old North End Repair Cafe, for Food Not Cops for their daily food and essential supplies distribution, and also for Naomi and Noor for the People's Farm Stand for their fresh produce distribution that happens right here in the Old North End. And also, we were able to award $500 to Shelby Glass for the Braille Trail at the 311 North Avenue Poetry Walk to make that wonderful community resource more accessible. The rest of the funds will be spent on, let's see, $250 for NPA operations. So that's yard signs, flyers, other outreach. We're really focusing on ways to get more people participating and to get more people at the meetings, especially when we get back to in person at the community center. And then the remaining funds, which is $750, will be allocated to the community dinner. And so those funds will be used if and when we're able to restart community dinners again, and and also for general food and good things for the community to, so if we end up with a non-traditional community dinner, a picnic outside, something once the weather gets warmer, that's where those funds will be used. So thank you to everyone who applied and to these amazing projects, and we're really looking forward to seeing how they turn out. And then also related to community dinner, I would love to pass it over to Patrick to give an update on some upcoming plans and needs.
I don't want to jinx it because it's been a long time, but we are hoping to start our community dinners back up. Definitely by June. We'll see if we can pull it together by May. It's probably going to be a bit different than it was in the past, given our fearless leader is currently enduring some cancer treatment. So we're going to have to reach out to a lot of the usuals and some new folks for assistance. Might just start off with some basic dessert snack foods, or we might go full on dinner. Knowing Janet, it'll be full on 12-course Ethiopian dinner with some sort of weird Mexican wedding cake for dessert. That is all the news I have. I'm excited about it because it's been a long time. And that was pretty much the only reason that we had 150 people at most of these NPA meetings was for dinner, and I wish they would stay around. But
Great.
I will keep everyone updated, hopefully, depending on what we all decide in terms of getting together at the community space. It would be nice to trash the Zoom thing, not completely, but mostly. Hopefully, maybe sooner than later. All right, I think that's all I need, unless anybody has any questions.
I have a question, Patrick. If someone wants to get involved to help out with the community dinner, who should they contact?
I think we have a community dinner website, ONE Community Dinner at Weebly. And through that, you can reach out. We will start our volunteers have the benefit of member worker hours through the co-op. So if folks out there can pass the word, you will be able to get your member worker hours again. If you go to our website, there is a sign-in sheet that has positions available to sign in. I have to remember it's been 2 years. We'll try to update it so we won't have too many people. There'll be cleanup crew and a starting crew, the usual stuff. And again, I don't want to jinx it, but fingers crossed.
That's great. Thanks for the update, Patrick, and all our best wishes to Janet. So great. Well, I think we'll slide into public forum. So if anyone has an announcement that they'd like to make, please raise your hand or wave at me at the video, and please try to keep your announcement to 2 minutes. Jess, do you want to say something?
Oh, why don't we can let Charlie and Tony go first, and I'll make an announcement after.
Okay.
Mine is a forum comment. Are we doing forum first or announcements first?
Forum right now, Tony. Go ahead.
Okay. Again, Tony Reddington. I live across from the park, the famous park at City Hall. And I just want to comment, we're going to be hearing more about the Main Street project from the Department of Public Works shortly. And I think I'm a typical resident of the Old North End in downtown, been here around 10 years. I have personally been almost seriously hurt or killed at the Pearl Street North Winooski intersection, walking and biking. I came out of Cherry Street, which is the last time I'll do that, to turn north and almost got hit by a car. So I've had 2 near-death experiences. I've also had a bicyclist literally fly at my eye level one early evening on Pearl Street as that bicyclist was hit by a car, and he fortunately landed in the big puddle there at the George Street parking area. Got up, he was okay. And I also saw a bicyclist, Jay hooked at a sidewalk at a entrance to a driveway on North Winooski, and actually was the one who called the emergency number to get the emergency services to him because he had a very severe, certainly had a concussion. We have a very unsafe street system except for the marketplace. And right now, the Main Street project has it has 4 of the 7 intersections at a high crash. They average 78 injuries per decade, 7.8 injuries a year. And there's no provision in the project. There's been no examination. There's been no advisory committee. None of the normal things we do when we do a quarter study. I therefore proposed a resolution that I'll send to the committee, to the steering committee, which says, let's, and I'll quote it here. Ward 3 is a location of 6 of 7 Main Street project injury plagued intersections, 3 on the Vermont Trans High crash list. And we hereby advise the City Council safety first while addressing racial and low income inequality and climate heating. Carry out national and Vermont proven safety countermeasures for this project, cutting pedestrian injuries overall, and overall reducing injuries on those intersections by at least half, and fatals or serious injuries by 90%. It's no longer, it's got to be safety first. We haven't been doing that. And I think that we as a NPA, at least in Ward 3, should be advising the City Council to make safety a serious consideration. Thank you.
Thanks, Tony. Is that a resolution for us to consider at the April meeting?
Yes, exactly, Molly. I'll submit the wording to you in a few minutes, and then which has been, and so we'll have it for the next agenda, if
Okay.
if the steering committee is willing to do it.
Okay, thank you, Tony. Charlie, would you like to go ahead?
Okay. Yeah, let's see. What do you want to, just keeping track of the time. There are many homeless people, but in BHA buildings, sometimes we have problems. Now, somebody had written into the Front Porch Forum about the police not being able to help get a trespasser off her place. She was sleeping in the garden and the police couldn't do anything. We had a person sleeping in our flowers 1 foot from the sidewalk on College Street near Pine, and the police were called by the building manager. In the other case, they said, well, if you don't own the building or you don't work here, you can't call the police about somebody. So we had the building manager ask the police to remove the person, and they wouldn't even wake them up. There's a lot wrong with the rules that they enforce and the rules that they don't enforce. I am very glad that the mayor did not succeed in keeping the person who's doing what he's doing now, which is like not enough and with a bad attitude. Let's see. As far as the great streets, it involves the ravine at the top end, the block, which is gaily named the Gateway Block. It's over the old sewer ravine, and the people who work on great streets will probably try to leave playing with the ravine for last, but it'll just run over budget and be totally a mess for years. Start at the top, fix the ravine, fix the sewers, and if you have money left, then you could play with Main Street. And as Tony said, we need safety things. It's not supposed to look like a tourist park. It's supposed to be a place where people live and keep on living.
Thank you,
Thank you.
Charlie. Abbott, would you like to go next?
Yes, thank you. And sorry, it's a little dark here. I had to pull over and call in from my car because I'm just coming back I'm in Ward 3 and I'm with my neighbor who's in Ward 2. And the issue I wanted to bring to public forum tonight, I'll try to keep it really brief, is that over the last 2 years, we've been looking at short-term rentals in Burlington and trying to regulate them in a way that stops property speculation and also protects renters from being displaced. But a lot of the existing short-term rentals that are here are done by, and this is things like Airbnb as an example of short-term rentals, or vacation rental by owner. A lot of the ones that are here, we've heard from a lot of public comment in the Planning Commission and now at City Council, are for either folks who want to age in place. It's mostly women and lower to middle income people who are doing these short-term rentals. So that's one class of people. And then the other are more like myself, where they're sort of like young entrepreneurial types, but I also really believe in mixed income housing. So personally, I've used the short-term rentals that I do in the building that I own to offset the rent increases. Our taxes have increased quite a bit, but also just I do 2 low income, like Section 8 vouchers. And when I bought the building a few years ago, it did have a couple of Section 8 people already. It was in total disrepair. There's a disabled adult man and a disabled mother who live in one of the apartments, and they've been there for 18 years. It's just doing short-term rental allows us to keep them in place and also make the building of safe quality for them and other people to keep habitating in it. So the issue has got it. Planning Commission made a recommendation, and then it went to full city council, and they totally threw it out. And then Sarah Carpenter, who's worked in affordable housing her whole life in our ward, she actually was responsible for the creation of the Monroe Place. It's at the corner of Monroe Street and North Champlain Street. It provides housing to some of the most vulnerable members of our community. They work directly with Howard Center. And so that's a Sarah Carpenter project. She was also the executive director of VHFA for a long time. Sarah Carpenter made a proposal that really curtailed short-term rentals, but allowed for some of these niche uses such as affordability offsets and low-income housing provisions. And now the council didn't
Sorry,
pass
Abbott,
that.
we have to cut you off. We're trying to keep it to 2 minutes.
I understand.
You have a lot to say there, but you can feel free to chime in again. There were some other folks. We always will go over time here.
Thanks.
Yeah,
Sorry.
I understand. Thanks for listening.
Thanks,
Thank
Abbott.
you
Thanks,
for coming.
Patrick. Jess?
Thanks, Molly, and thank you, Abbott, for that. Also on the topic of housing, I just wanted to let folks know that April is Fair Housing Month, and it's an opportunity to raise awareness about discrimination and exclusion that happens in housing all over the country, including here in Vermont, and also to celebrate what's working, celebrate inclusive, affordable communities. And so there's a whole series of events, informational events, webinars, even some in-person events with a youth and arts focus. And I'd really encourage folks to check out the Fair Housing website, which is fairhousingmonthvt.org. And the events around the state are coordinated by the Fair Housing Project of CVOEO in partnership with Vermont Legal Aid, the Human Rights Commission, CEDO, the Vermont Department of Libraries, and a whole bunch of other sponsors and partners that make these activities possible. One of the most fun activities is a Heart and Home Community Art Project that's in partnership with the Old North End Art Center and Art So Wonderful, and groups, libraries and community groups, and also housing sites can request bundles of art kits to be used for this community project. So I'd encourage you to check out fairhousingmonthvt.org and to think about the ways that we can make our communities more accessible to everyone and make sure that everyone has a home. Thank you.
Thanks, Jess. Mayumi? I think you're muted.
When it comes to housing, things are really bad. I mean, people are asking like $3,300 for a 3-bedroom in Winooski. Okay, and our rents are comparable to New York City. So, I mean, when it comes to housing, the housing I'm living in is substandard. I have air coming in through my floor. I've sent an email, I've called my landlord, and they have done nothing. So when it comes, for me personally, when it comes to short-term rentals, I'm like, nah. Because what you're doing is the people that are being squeezed out of the Old North End are the low income, the working class. Like the neighborhood that I grew up on in Peru and George, it's all like young professional. There are hardly any working class families. And when I grew up, that's all that neighborhood was. And I'm sorry, I don't I really, as far as it comes to short-term rentals, I think they suck. I think they really hurt our housing market for the people that can least afford to do it. And I'm not saying that what he's doing is not a good thing, but I'm just saying that there are some landlords that will literally kick people out, fix up the apartment, and then it turns into a short-term rental. I know of several that has happened to, that they've had to move. So I don't know. I'm not in a good mood when it comes to housing, you know?
Thanks, Mayumi.
So.
Christopher Aaron? Christopher Aaron, did you have your hand up?
I did, just briefly. Thank you. I too, I feel like with regard to the short-term rental situation, currently short-term rentals are less than 2% of our Burlington housing market. In the last 2 years time, I have spent a lot of time learning about this subject and listening to the people who operate short-term rentals here in Burlington. In addition to the fact that I feel that the ordinance that what the city council, the resolution that the city council had passed is some of the most restrictive, if not the most restrictive in the country. It will have unintended consequences and ripple effects upon our economy. I think it goes too far personally. I think that Sarah Carpenter who has a record of working with people and creating affordable housing here in Burlington, came forward with a proposal that is more acceptable. And I encourage this community to really take a moment and think about how Burlington is in a housing crisis caused by a serious lack of supply and 30 years at least worth of failure to lead in this area. If we can't really regulate our way out of a housing crisis caused by regulation with more regulation. We really need to humble ourselves and check our egos on this. If we stick our hands in the dough too much, it will never rise. And we really need to have a more moderate approach to this. So if I have any time left, I'd like to yield it back to Abbott if he still has something else to say. And thank you very much for the time.
We are pretty much on time, so I think we should flag this as a potential future topic for our group and move on to the next one. I have one last public forum person from my house.
Hey all, this is Jacob. Hey, you might remember last, I don't know, summer or something, I announced a community build for insulating window inserts. Oh wow, my hair is special. And it happened in November. Rock Point School hosted us very generously in their library, and a bunch of community members came together and built insulating window inserts, and we built over 150 of them. And it was really cool to see. We had homeowners, we had renters, we had landowners who wanted to provide it for their units, and we even had an instance where a renter got their landlord excited and have it do for their whole building. So it was a great mix of folks. And why I'm announcing, what I'm saying is we're gonna try to do it again, and we want more people. We wanna do bigger. We wanna go well over 200 inserts next fall. And so if you're interested, or if you wanna help spread the word, please do. We're gonna start doing a little campaign here, so you might see us more. The organization that helps us put this on is called Window Dressers. So the easiest way to learn more about this is just go to windowdressers.com, and in the different community builds, you can find the Burlington one and reach out to the local group. And if you want to sign up for next fall, that would be great. And also, if you please spread the word and let people know. Yeah, that's what I got, and hopefully you'll hear more from me later on. See ya, thanks.
Thanks, Jacob. Okay, let's wrap up public forum there and move on to our next agenda item, which is Great Streets, the Main Street concept and design presentation and discussion from the city. We have Olivia here from the Department of Public Works. So Olivia, would you like to go forward with your presentation?
I think I'm actually going to kick us off today. So I'm Laura Wheelock with Public Works. I'm a senior public works engineer. I'm one of the project managers working on this project for the city. Olivia is also here with me tonight. She's also a project manager with DPW. There's many people that are involved in our team here. This project has a really strong water resources component. So we also have one of our water resources engineers that sits with us and helps us with this project. But really it's an entire city kind of a collaborative of all the departments. There's Parks, CEDO, REIB, Church Street Marketplace. I'm sure I'm missing BCA. I'm probably still missing a few. So while it's us here tonight, it's certainly a collaborative effort. And I do have a short presentation to maybe get some thoughts going about this project for everyone. So I am sharing my screen. Hopefully you guys can see this. Kick us off with the Main Street Revitalization Project. We appreciate everybody's support with the town meeting day vote. Really, that just gives us some funding to continue to move forward, to look at the different options, to be able to investigate and start collecting data on the ravine sewer. So we appreciate that. Main Street, we're here to talk about the more of the roadway component today. That's the part that we've already started our concepts with. This will go from Battery Street to South Union Street. It's 6 blocks of the downtown. It's 7 intersections. So it crosses a pretty significant area within our community and mostly within Ward 3. So what we build this off of is the downtown Great Street Standards. This was adopted by the City Council in 2018. This really just gives us a guide about how we want to shape and form some of the fundamentals and the functionality of our streets. It also gives us a palette of materials to use to help a little bit with consistency and long-term maintenance and having durable materials. So what are we looking at for Main Street? We want to make sure that we're establishing safe connections for bicycles, pedestrians, and all users on the street, improving the transit options, and also at the same time managing stormwater a little better. Main Street has a significant amount of impervious area with the block faces and the wide right of way, along with all of the buildings and other areas that feed into it. We also are pausing to figure out how to make Main Street have places. And so this is one of the things that a lot of our outreach has been doing and our focus groups is really trying to hear the creative ideas that our community has and the ways that they want to see Main Street reshaped. So that it becomes a place that's thought of a little bit more, you know, like the waterfront or Church Street, that it's more of a destination and not just a place to pass through. A huge focus of this is making sure that people of all abilities are able to use Main Street. It is a bit of a challenging street. It does have a significant slope to it within the project limits and very limited flat areas. And so we want to make sure that both movement up and down the street, as well as adjacent to supporting businesses, is better accommodated throughout the corridor. So really this project is for pedestrians, cyclists, transit users, businesses, property owners, as well as vehicles. So as we look at the street, we try to break it down a little bit into different categories. There's functional portions of the street, the roadway, the sidewalk, the sections that a lot of people don't necessarily see or think about every day, about the utilities that are underground, the soil that might support tree volume, stormwater infiltration. But there's also the other community type spaces, the unique and beautiful places for street furnishing, signage, trees, taking in and reflecting the architectural character of buildings, as well as the community led about how this spaces can be activated, energized, used throughout, you know, all of our 12 months and for all of the different community members that we have. This rendering was done under our previous effort back in 2016. So in the original creation of the downtown TIF, we did have a little bit of money to start a concept plan. And so this rendering comes from that. This is here really just to give everybody ideas. The Main Street corridor under the walk bike plan dictates that there will be separated, dedicated bicycle facilities within this corridor. This is just one representation about how that could look on the street. But other things to take note of are wider pedestrian spaces, place for tree ecology. So the tree belts would serve to infiltrate stormwater as well as provide subsurface structure for healthy tree growth, on-street stormwater management, and still travel lanes, parking lanes, crosswalks, and other amenities that could exist that we want to hear feedback on. So what have we been doing to date? Really, this effort started in the beginning of February, where we introduced the Main Street concept. It is meant to just be the beginning. We know that some of you haven't heard about this project since 2016 or 17 when we kicked it off, and that's okay. This effort over the next few months is really about gathering the people who are interested and providing us feedback, being engaged in stakeholder meeting groups, and providing feedback about both the design process and during construction. So this effort that we've been going through since the beginning of February is really about kind of collecting everybody that really wants to help us with Main Street. So we've been to a lot of different meetings, and we'll be going to a whole bunch more meetings, but really that kind of turns over into our consultants providing a concept plan right around the end of April. And so that will be April 28th. There'll be information coming out about where that's going to be hosted. I imagine it'll be a hybrid meeting, and then that'll follow with a few other structured meetings, and then ultimately landing at the City Council for acceptance of a concept. And then proceeding right into, or actually more continuing with the design, leading towards construction. But really a lot of outreach from the city, from our supporting departments, and our consultant throughout this phase. To touch a little bit on the focus groups, one of the things that was really glaringly obvious, we had our neighborhood meeting at the beginning of February. We completed our typical engagement that our engagement plan would have called for, and even went a little above and beyond. It did a lot of mailings. And one of the questions that we asked was about the demographics of the people in the room. And it was a very, very clear message that it was 100% white people that had attended, and they all fit that like 30 to 50 generally demographic age range. So what we've been doing, and it didn't show up, one of these boxes didn't show up, but we've been targeting those groups of people that didn't quite or don't typically attend our structured meetings. So a youth group, we've met with some high school students, we've met with our businesses a few times, we've had an immigrant and refugee group meeting, we have a BIPOC meeting next week, and actually we have a mobility support group meeting, or mobility group meeting on the 24th of March. So if you're interested in joining in any of those group meetings that could have potentially already happened or are still scheduled, we are going to meet with these groups a few times throughout this project. So if you're interested in participating in one of those and feel more comfortable participating in one of those, please reach out and let us know. So what we had done with some of our other outreach, this is just an example of a poll question, but we, trying to make our remote meetings a little bit more interactive, had a few poll questions to go to the audience through dynamic responses. But I wanted to pull these two out just to get people thinking about, what is Main Street to you today? And tomorrow, I want Main Street to become. And those are the types of things that we want to learn about. What is Main Street now, and how can we really make Main Street great? So our next steps, I talked a little bit about how that late April, early May timeframe is looking to present concepts to the public with what we've heard, and then moving into the design and permitting. Start of construction is targeted as fall of 2023. This is anticipated to take a minimum of 2 years, and it's worded that way. Charlie had spoken to it a little earlier. The ravine sewer, which was a part of the vote that happened at town meeting day, is just barely getting started. And so we're working on procuring a consultant so that we can get some early testing of spring water flows and then move that portion of the project through its design or concept design and construction. It will be constructed with Main Street. That's the ultimate goal. Doesn't make any sense to do the surface of Main Street on that end of the project and not have addressed the sewer, but anything that we do in that area will be a big effort. And so I anticipate that that end of the project might take more than 2 years. Whereas the other lower sections towards Battery could be a little faster. We want to highlight, we've learned a lot through earlier Great Streets projects, as well as some of the city's more recent projects with the waterfront, with Shelburne Street Roundabout, about our engagement process throughout. But we're also still learning. And so as we do reach out to the community, we want to learn about other better ways that we can stay connected, both you hearing what's happening, as well as us hearing from you what's happening. So I have Olivia's contact information up here, the Great Streets website, which was actually on the agenda tonight. So her contact information is also on the website. She is really the best person to reach out to about either knowing where to go get information, how you can participate, or just taking in any comments, feedbacks, or questions. So I conclude hopefully a short presentation tonight with leaving Olivia's information up on the screen. But maybe kicking off, the question, do you or people in your community visit Main Street? Kind of why or why not? So I will unshare and allow anyone to provide us some questions or feedback.
Great, thank you, Laura. We have about 9 minutes for questions and feedback. So yeah, anyone who'd like to speak, please raise your hand.
And if there's nothing at this point, you guys can easily have your time back, but
let's give folks a few seconds to think of good questions. Tony, what you got on your mind?
We want to get our money's worth out of the presenters tonight, so we'll hold them here for a few more minutes. I live about a stone's throw from Main Street, and I moved from basically just to North Winooski, just above Radio Bean, about almost 2 years ago. So this is, I'm in the downtown area versus being in the old North End. And the one thing I've learned in the last 2 years, it was a real surprise to me, is that I now can go to a lot of places without ever going through a signalized intersection where I have to push buttons and wait for cars to stop and look for the people who are pushing the stale green or pushing through the red lights or turning when they shouldn't. So I really love it. I can go to the marketplace and went to breakfast this morning, will tomorrow morning without ever going through a signalized intersection. The intersection I'm next to, which is Shelburne, is Main Street and St. Paul, of course, is the site of the last one of the fatal crashes in the city, in which a young worker at Deal.com was killed in a T-bone crash. As I talked earlier, I've been in 2 almost near-death experiences on at the corner of South Winooski and Pearl and down at Cherry and Pearl, that the consultants have always talked about that section between of South Winooski from Pearl to Main Street is Death Valley. And so that's true. I've had 2 near-death experiences there. So I think that was an apt name. There is no standard for safety in the so-called safety standards that the city established. I was at the hearing back in 2016, and safety, I had to mention, is safety one of the purposes of the Great Streets? And the presenter said, we forgot that. The point I'm making is this, is that those 6 intersections, 7 intersections, 3 of them are high crash, including the highest crash intersection in the state of Vermont, which is at which is at Main Street and South Winooski. There is no, I didn't find any standards. The standard that we have in Vermont is, and nationally now, is the roundabout that would cut at least 90% of the serious and fatal accidents I don't care about the injuries. I guess we can have them, but we shouldn't be killing and seriously injuring people on Main Street anymore. And that means the current standard, downtown standard for Vermont and in Federal Highway is the modern roundabout, particularly for pedestrians. The roundabout's the only proven counter safety measure for pedestrians. And 1/3 of the people who live in this area have no access to a car. I would think you'd have a focus group made up of people who only walk and do not have cars. And that is 1/3 of the population here.
Tony,
There's no
can you
consideration of
wrap
climate
up?
change. Okay, I'll just wrap up by saying there's nothing addressing specifically analytics for climate change and the standards. There's nothing that approaches and deals with the fact that we have a community of color, the King Maple neighborhood, which is adjacent, and they are most vulnerable to the lack of safety at these intersections.
Yes,
I'm done.
thank you for many comments. Safety is really one of the first goals of this project. There will be many safety improvements, both shorter crossings to visibility, as well as working to understand vehicle speeds. A lot more to come on that. We have heard earlier comments that you've brought during the bond process as well that our consultant is working through. So more to come there, but I do want to give the other hand a chance if we have time.
Yes, Chris, go ahead.
Hey, thanks for taking my question. I just want to echo what Tony said about the roundabouts. I think that, as I understand it, the roundabout is recently recognized by the Federal Highway Administration as being one of the safer alternatives. And I would hope that as we move forward in this, we can make some of the design decision on the basis of facts and data, particularly as things have evolved. It appears in the years since the project was initially envisioned. The second piece I have there is also related to the loss of parking. Currently we have the diagonal parking spaces, and we're going to be going to parallel. That implies a significant loss of parking. So I'd like to know how many pit spaces we have now, and I'd like to know how many spaces we're going to have after this has been re-envisioned.
So that's still a difficult question to answer. I think we had spoken at the first public meeting. Really, this process right now is shaping kind of the change in the parking and how many spaces we would come forward with the concept. We've heard a lot from the community about different ways to activate the street, different things that are important, public seating, spaces for maybe some sort of street food or other activation. And so that's gonna drive a little bit the parking use and demand or the other space use on the street. That the answer to your question should be available around mid-April. We have a presentation planned for the DPW Commission, which is the authoritative body over parking in the city. And so they do need to hear about the parking lots, and we'll need to adopt and accept any recommendations. So
Which body is that? Has oversees
the Department of Public Works Commission. They meet on the third Wednesday of every month at 6:30 p.m.
Well, I would think that we could probably do some quick math here between the blocks. There's a finite distance there. And if I recall correctly, a standard parking space is about 14 feet in length. I think you might have a better idea as the engineer. So if we applied the math,
20 to 22.
20 to 22. Okay, so bigger spaces. So recognizing that the current width is maybe 8 feet, 10 feet, 10 is half of 20, it kind of implies that we're going to lose about half the parking. And I understand we're still in the design process, but it is a bit disappointing that we can't really get any hard and fast numbers from the department as this goes down. But we'll give you guys some opportunity to work through it because it sounds like there's still some moving parts going on.
There certainly are moving parts, and the parking loss is a concern to more than just the residents. The businesses, some of them are highly concerned, and other of them are actually fairly excited about some of the changes. But we will be bringing kind of all of those thoughts and ideas and feedback collectively together as we do work to present the concepts.
Well, thanks for your work on this. I know it's got to be challenging to try to, integrate all the different viewpoints into a final product, but I appreciate your willingness to come into the NPA and listen to what folks have to say. So thank you for doing that.
Thank you.
Great. Any other questions? We still have about 5 minutes.
If I could, I have one more in response to Tony talking about safety and the DPW Commission. We have adopted the Vision Zero policy with our projects, and that was done. I'd have to go back in the notes, but it was done before, certainly before COVID, when that idea about how DPW would approach our transportation projects and to meet the Vision Zero goal. So there is a focus for safety. It may not have been written in the Great Street Standards, which really just apply to the downtown. We are working on engineering standards, and that information would certainly appear within that document that applies to the whole city.
Sorry about that, everybody. I have a question in my house.
There's always
I have a
one.
question. So you asked, how do we interact? And I thought about it throughout this whole time. I feel like I don't really go down Main Street that much. I'm more intersected. So I don't know what that means, but I thought I should let you know. I more often intersect Main Street through all the other roads. I don't really go down it at all. So there you go.
No, that's helpful feedback. We want to know, where and how people are encountering the street, and it may or may not in the future divert them, or maybe it'll make your trip a little easier.
Naomi.
Was that a Zoom bomb? Okay.
Unfortunately, yes.
Okay.
Great. Any other feedback for BPW? Infinite.
Thank you. Really quick, maybe not so quick, but and maybe at another time, I'm really curious to hear how the project is going about procuring contracts from consultants. I reckon that you'll have quite a few consultants coming from multiple different directions throughout the project. And I'm just curious how the city, what the city's procurement process is for handing out contracts for some of the consultants.
Yep, that's a great question. The current design team that we have is made up primarily of a civil engineering firm called VHB. They have underneath them a firm, Agency Landscape and Planning, and then also helping with a little bit of design and outreach is Grayscale Collaborative. A really diverse group of people, generally from the New England region, if not really local to Vermont. But there's not kind of a collaborative that's over on the West Coast or whatnot, but really a core group so far focused in New England. We also have our water sewer design firm that is local to Vermont, but I think that they're a little further northeast of here. As we move forward, it would be a competitive bid for a construction contractor to construct the project. We are working with our racial equity and diversity group as it relates to how this project meets certain initiatives that the city has. And I think that would lead to trying to make sure that our general contractor does have certain subs and maybe meets a disadvantaged business type requirement.
Wait, so when you say racial equity group, are you referring to Taisha Green's office?
Yes, our REIB department, as well as we are meeting with their committee next week, and have already had participation from one of the staff members within the department at a few of our meetings.
Oh, I thought they were. I didn't know they were still active. Okay, thank you so much.
Yep.
Okay, I think we have time for one last quick question. So I'll give it to Charlie. Can you make it a minute or less?
Sure. I just wanted to say that there is now a Burlington Aging Council. I have begged them to change the name because everybody's aging, but it's about taking care of the older people and making sure that the city is doing right by the people who can't get around so well and the people who are aging. And I think Brian Pine is one of the organizers. They should be giving you feedback about what it's like on Main Street for people on wheels and with walkers and people who have a hard time getting around. Burlington Aging Council.
Yep, thank you. We did have a preliminary meeting with them in January, but it is a great reminder to go back once we have something more substantial to display. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, everyone. I think we'll leave it
all.
there, but thank you, Laura and Olivia, for coming in and speaking with us and for your hard work for the city. Great. So we will move on to our next agenda item. We have Andy Simmons here to talk about the Pine Street Barge Canal and give a presentation.
Hi, folks. My name is Andy Simon. I'm here with my partner, Ruby Perry, and we live in the South End next to Callahan Park on Locust Street, and wanted to talk to you about what seems to be on the face of it, seems like a South End issue, which is questions around conservation of the Pine Street Barge Canal. But I'd like to convince you that the fate of the Pine Street Barge Canal is something that the whole city should be concerned about. So we're going to do a short presentation and then would love to have some questions. So I'll share my screen. And just wanted to start, for people that don't know where the Barge Canal is, it's where the little marker that says site is. It's actually just west of Pine Street, north of Burlington Electric Department, and south of the Maltex building, right along the lake. I'm assuming that many of you perhaps know this area, and people have been skating there and going by on the bike path for years. It's 28 acres of wetlands and forested land. And we want to just give you a little orientation to it, a little introduction to it. This is it's really important to know a rather complex and interesting history of this area. This is a view of the extent of the wetlands area pre-1850s. That means before the coming of the railroad, before the industrialization. This was an area that was a transitional zone between the growing city of Burlington and the lake. It was a place of hunting and gathering and fishing for indigenous people for many centuries, and then later for the early Euro-American residents. The big first major ecological change that happened at the Barge Canal and that whole area is the coming of the railroad. This is one of the locomotives of the Rutland and Burlington Railroad. They arrived in 1849. And you can see with this map, if you can get oriented, the lake is in this view up above. You can see that the railway cuts off the Barge Canal from the lake pretty much totally. And the arrival of the railroad also promoted the rapid industrialization of Burlington. We'll come back to this view, but just wanted to sort of use that to show that how the railroad is sort of in between the canal and the lake, whereas it used to be just a wetland. What happened in the 19th century, in the second half of the 19th century, was that the lumber industry totally dominated the economy of Burlington. Once Vermont forests were pretty much depleted, the wood mostly came down from Quebec on sailing barges. And as the industry grew, these wetlands, the wetland area got pretty much totally filled in with wood chips, with sawdust, with other industrial detritus from the lumber mills. But the problem for the lumber mills was that since they were coming down on the lake, they had to get a lot of storage for the winter time when the lake was frozen. So Lawrence Barnes, you will remember him. He was a lumber baron in the 19th century, and he got the idea of having this barge canal excavated into the fill area with a drawbridge so that they could get through the railroad track. And the drawbridge is still there, but that's what filled up this whole area, is all these stacks of lumber. This is the view from 1887 drawing. But the lumber industry declined at the end of the 19th century. And another industry took its place at the Barge Canal. This is a manufactured gas plant. Manufactured gas makes gas from coal, and it ran on Pennsylvania coal that was shipped up first on barges and then later on the railroad. And the Burlington Gaslight Company supplied gas to businesses and households in the city for 60 years and didn't close until 1966. You can see a big storage area in the background of this view of a gas plant. Making gas from coal was a really dirty business. The coal tar, saturated wood chips, and other waste products were dumped out back in the wetlands and on the disused lumber storage areas. With the growing environmental consciousness of the 70s and 80s, the newly created EPA, Environmental Protection Agency, took charge of the Barge Canal as a federal Superfund site. They identified, in studying this area, 56 contaminants of concern. These included benzene, toluene, other hydrocarbons, and lots of heavy metals. After a really fairly lengthy and unique and sometimes contentious process, the EPA issued a record of decision in 1998. And the result of that was they decided to cap the coal tar that was sitting on the bottom of the water in the canal and essentially leave the land alone. They would review it every 5 years and do regular monitoring of the soil and water. So we're back to this map, just to sort of give you an idea of what's happening pretty much now and since 1966, when the manufactured gas plant closed. In this view, you can see that little red square down at the sort of on Pine Street. That's where the manufactured gas plant was. And the whole plant, the whole area, the 28 acres of water and wetlands and forests that are there now are pretty much grown over with native plants like cottonwood and red osier dogwood, and many invasive plants like buckthorn and phragmites. But lots of animals, beavers, herons, ducks, geese inhabit the wetlands. And the major contaminants that were identified by the EPA are pretty much, according to them, stabilized, stayed in place. They haven't moved around a lot since the land was left alone. So this is again reoriented back to sort of north-south. This is the zoning map for that land. You can sort of see that the area in green, outlined in green here, is all zone conservation. This land right here is public land, right in the middle, 11 acres. There are other private parcels that are within the conservation zone. The yellow boundary is the federal Superfund boundary. And these two parcels right here, 453 and 501, are currently for sale for $2.5 million and are slated for some kind of redevelopment, but we'll talk more about that later.
So here's where we started our campaign to conserve and remediate the Barge Canal. On a cold day in mid-November 2021, we gathered with friends and neighbors to consider how much the Barge Canal has done to heal itself and protect the lake. With debris from the land, late flowers and herbs from our gardens, and paintings of mushrooms and birds, we created this collective offering of our gratitude. On that day, in a very real way, we committed ourselves to caring for this land. There are many, many reasons to conserve and care for the Barge Canal site. And we'll take a short drone tour in the hopes, while we discuss them, in the hopes that you too will come to care for this land. So the most obvious benefit to Burlington is a healthy, functioning wetlands habitat in the middle of the South End, home to mammals, birds, insects, plants, fungi, and microbes. The living Barge Canal protects the lake by providing flood control for the South End and helps the city manage the stormwater runoff. It stabilizes the soil, containing and slowly transforming the toxins left over from industry. The living Barge Canal sequesters carbon, creates a climate resilient and nature-based solutions to a climate disruption. The Barge Canal also has the potential to remind us of our history, indigenous, natural, and industrial history. At this point, the city of Burlington owns, as Andy pointed out, the 11 acres in the center of the Barge Canal, which was purchased decades ago in preparation for construction of the Southern Connector Highway. The rest is privately held. The small private parcels along the railroad track are wetlands and are already zoned for conservation. And this is where our regeneration work needs to be started immediately. We can begin this spring to care for the land. There is extensive debris from decades of neglect at the Barge Canal. Starting in April, there will be a volunteer effort to inventory the plants and animals on the public land. Non-native buckthorn has taken over large parts of the site along the canal, and native polycultures need to be planted and nurtured. We are envisioning the site as a forested parkland, maybe even a botanical garden of diverse native species. We imagine the Barge Canal as the center for education with interpretive pathways to learn about our natural history, indigenous presence on the land, as well as the obvious industrial history that's embodied here. We imagine it as a research and training ground for scientists, a living laboratory for much needed cold climate bioremediation research. And a UVM class in plant and soil science has already designed their semester's project here. So that's 11 students that are doing work on that 11-acre public parcel. A wildlands park could offer safe public access with boardwalks and a possible route through to the bike path. Ideally, we see the land already under conservation, expanding to include the private land at the Barge Canal. We're exploring the idea of rematriation of the land, opening to its original inhabitants for ritual and traditional uses by entering into partnership with our Abenaki neighbors. We have been active these last few months. Our main strategy has been to learn as much as we can about the Barge Canal and to get as many people aware and involved as possible. Just to give you a feel for it, consulted with Indigenous elders and leaders. We launched the petition. We have now 576 signers and counting. We talked with city boards and commissions, provided information to the city council, discussions with CEDO, the EPA, Vermont DEC, discussions with land trusts, engaged with private landowners, worked with UVM students and teachers, made contact with the Vermont environmental groups, held pop-up events on Pine Street, talked to South End residents and business leaders, presented at the NPAs like this one. We have been busy. You can help. Your voice is essential to conserving and remediating this land. And now is the time to get involved. To develop your own relationship with this Barge Canal, visit the Barge Canal. And then write your city councilor, speak at public input sessions on the South End rezoning when they begin. Talk to neighbors and friends, show up for pop-up events, participate in citizen science projects, which will be starting in April. Sign the petition. We send regular updates out to petition signers. We have a Facebook page and a nascent website, and we need your help with all aspects of that campaign. The city of Burlington needs to be a partner in this effort to help with the active regeneration of the land, including cleaning it up as well as restoring and protecting the natural ecosystem. In order for this to happen, the city government needs to hear from Burlington residents that they care about the Barge Canal. We will ask that these links that are coming up there be included in the minutes when you get them, or you can contact us directly at sosburlington@gmail.com. So we see this brownfield transitioning with our care into a greenfield. Our vision for conserving the Barge Canal land is a paradigm shift, a different way of thinking about development and open land and about our responsibility to clean up after ourselves, a different way of thinking about our relationship to our home. We'll leave you with a poem by Judy Dow, an Abenaki elder and educator.
The words that she used in this poem, gypsies and pirates, are derogatory terms that were used by people in Burlington for Abenaki and French Canadians during the eugenics period. This is Judy's poem, The Canal Barge. A little inlet where one goes to seek refuge, home to the ancient ones, big and small. Gypsies sell their ash baskets to those going by, while pirates dock their barges for a temporary home. Lumber stored in piles mountains high brought flames red hot and smoky tones of gray throughout the sky. A cemetery for 3 barges, wide and long. Skeletons from a time long ago sit side by side with a schooner, while bare bones of others sink deep in the mud. Their silhouettes outlined in the archaeological reports. The basin dredged and filled over and over again, protected by breakwaters today. The canal stands calm. Sealed shut until 1961, an opening was made for barges to once again enter where they sat abandoned. Along came the Burlington Gaslight Company. The beautiful wetlands filled to their top with coal tar. Years of abuse left behind a huge Superfund site. The wetlands plants fight to survive, hanging in there for another day, but they can't do it alone. They need our help. Our feet have led us there and back many times, leaving only footprints behind. We've watched nature struggle along the canal for far too long. Those that have benefited from this land need to remember now. So we'd love to have your questions. I can't imagine that you don't have any.
Great. Thank you, Andy and Ruby, for that great presentation. Yeah, we have about 7 minutes for questions and comments, so please raise your hand. Jess.
Thanks. Hey, Ruby and Andy. That was thank you so much for that presentation. It was wonderful to see the aerial view of the site, because so much of it is hidden and we can't see it from either the bike path or Pine Street. So my question for you is about the space. So when you're talking about conserving and the Barge Canal area, are you talking about the entire undeveloped area or just the area that's currently marked for conservation? And do you see any possibility for any sort of partial development of the property on the Pine Street side? You know, as you know, there's always these competing pressures of needing to preserve and honor land, and also, especially here in Burlington, needing more housing development. And do you see any opportunities for some use of that space, or would you really like to see the entire space completely preserved and conserved and regenerated?
Well, we feel like, I think that's a great question. I'm glad you asked it, Jess. ideally, we would love to see this whole, the whole open land preserved, conserved, bioremediated, cared for. There are those 2 parcels on Pine Street that have been slated for development for decades. In fact, there have been several projects that have been planned for those parcels, and they've all fallen through for one reason or another. There seems to be another person interested in buying at least one of the parcels from Rick Davis. But, you know, a lot of the attention in the South End rezoning proposals have been on housing, but there are a couple reasons why housing doesn't work well on this space. The most obvious is that, you know, the contaminants of the Superfund site and the adjacent brownfield really don't make it a very appealing place to live permanently. And we have a long history in this country of housing, especially low-income people on toxic waste sites. So there's some real environmental justice issues that come up. It seems that the development plans, though we don't have any real details yet at this point, are not related to housing. They would have to jump through a lot of hoops. The EPA and DEC have had restrictions on that land, no housing, no childcare centers since 1998, and with good reason. And they would have to get those changed. They'd have to change the zoning to make it residential. I think that it's just, there's too many barriers, and most of them with some logic behind them and some science behind them to turn that into housing land. The argument of why that should be maybe activated, I heard that word from our friends at DPW, turned into something that would benefit the tax base, would make the economy more lively on Pine Street. Those are discussions that are going to need to happen. We just want to draw attention to the benefits that we're already getting from that land, that the above and beyond tax-based benefits, above and beyond sort of like the first and second bottom lines of that we usually operate with. We want to think more broadly about the many benefits in this era of climate disruption that we get from that land, and we will get into the future, especially if we care for it.
Thank you.
Tony, would you like to go ahead?
Unmute first. Okay, thank you, Andy. Thank you, Ruby. That's a wonderful presentation. I just had a question that relates basically to the Pine Street side or that area. I think as a lot of us know who've worked on worked on issues in the plan, the city plan that was developed for the South End. Burlington Electric Department alone has a well that's constantly tested because there's constant movement of these contaminants underground. They just don't sit there like, in basically like in King Tut's tomb. They move, and there was a surprising move of contaminants every 5 years that are checked, such that EPA had to go in and put some more barriers between the Barge Canal and Lake Champlain to slow that movement. So this is it's sort of like an underground live situation. My question actually relates to Pine Street, and you've talked about there may be a couple of lots that could be developed there along Pine Street. And secondly, there still would be some room in which people could access from Pine Street for, I guess you'd call it, quiet recreation through trails or just to enjoy, just to take a walk on a natural path. Is that something that's being considered? And recall that, as you know, I'm part of Pine Street Coalition. We're fighting for a sidewalk along Pine Street. Right now, it's a shared path. We think there should be a safe bikeway, separate safe bikeway and a sidewalk, like there is today in front of BED. They're going to take Burlington Electric. They're going to take that sidewalk and change it into a shared use path. Makes no sense at all. Would the presence of a sidewalk and a separate bikeway be a benefit to access as far as you're concerned for the public and for south end to those lands, whether their lots are developed or not?
Yeah.
Ruby, do you want to answer?
Well, I say yes. Yeah, absolutely. We need sidewalks for a lot of reasons. That the land along the borders Pine Street is a ecotone. It's an important transition zone between the busy Pine Street and all the water that's coming down off the hill and flowing into that wetlands. And the city stormwater system relies heavily on that wetland. So anything that interrupts that flow would have to be engineered very, very carefully. So I'd say yes, sidewalks is definitely. Keep in mind that, as you know, that this is a super fun site. Those toxins are not going anywhere. And our vision is that we take on the responsibility of caring for what's happening in the land. And it's not just, we're not just going to suggesting that it be dug up and hauled somewhere else, Coventry, or make a 13-acre pile of contaminated soil and cover it. We're suggesting that we develop and be a part of the process of figuring out how do we humans take care of the land that we've destroyed.
You know, I would just add, I just want to add to that we, you know, we're sort of working in two different directions at the same time, but they all involve the city. One is to you know, try to promote the idea of expanding the conservation zone to include the whole land. But the other is really getting the city of Burlington to turn its attention to that land, to put some resources into caring for it, to do the work that needs to happen. It's kind of, there's a sort of an irony that's behind all this, is that leaving the land alone for these 30 years, 23, 25 years, has been a great benefit for the land in many ways. You know, the original plan from the EPA was to scoop up all the contaminated soil, put it into a 13-foot high, 25-acre, or the other way around, 25-foot high, 13-acre toxic waste dump right there on the shores of Lake Champlain. And people said, no. People in Burlington just said, we're totally rejected that plan, got the elected leaders to get behind it, and went through a whole process that I referred to as, you know, fruitful and contentious, and a process of local consultation, and came up with the idea of just leaving that land alone and working on the bottom of the canal. So that land has been left alone, and that's good compared to what had been proposed before. But now it's time to actually put some energy into that place, because it needs a lot of care. It needs cleanup. It needs replanting. It needs bioremediation, and that's really what we're promoting. The idea of building buildings on those front parcels is technically feasible and is technically allowable under the EPA regulations. They'll have to sink pilings down 100 feet into bedrock because they can't disturb the soil more than 5 feet down. They have to go drilled straight through it. And there are federal funds for brownfield redevelopment that are going to be opened up to probably make that possible. So it's a big discussion to have, and certainly sidewalks are going to be necessary.
Thank you. Thank you so much for your presentation. We are a little bit over time, so I think we need to wrap up our presentation here. So sorry that we won't get to your question, Charlie and Patrick. But thank you so much, Ruby and Andy, for coming and speaking with us, and for all of your great work for the city.
Thank you. Thank you very much for making time on your agenda. And it's so nice to see all of my friends from wards 2 and 3. Thank you.
Thank you.
Great. Well, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is a bit of NPA housekeeping, our bylaws. Each NPA is supposed to have a set of bylaws to govern its operation. Wards 2 and Wards 3 NPA haven't had an official adopted set of bylaws for as long as most of us can remember, I believe. we've had a drafted set that just haven't been formally adopted. And the steering committee would like to move forward with adopting the drafted bylaws so that we can operate in a formal manner going forward. So we're coming before the NPA to ask for a vote to approve them. These drafted bylaws are the same ones that we've warned at meetings for the past year or so. So there shouldn't, if you looked at them a few months ago, there haven't been any changes to them. Yeah, there is a provision in the bylaws that allows for them to be amended as needed with a 2/3 vote of support by the NPA. So they are things that we can come back and revise as needed, but we feel that having an adopted official set will benefit our operation going forward. So the steering committee would like to propose making a vote, but before that, we can open it up for any questions or discussion on the bylaws themselves. Any comments from members? Chris.
Move to adopt the proposed bylaws as written.
Thanks, Chris. The procedure that we thought we would follow is actually a Zoom poll because we have one set of bylaws for Ward 2 operation and one set of bylaws for Ward 3 operation. Since we are different wards but have chosen to operate jointly, we just wanted to have adopted bylaws for each ward for organization of things. So we'll be voting on these separately as Ward 2 and Ward 3, and Sam will open up the Zoom poll if and when people are ready to do that. So maybe what we should do is have someone make a motion to vote. Oh, Sam got a little ahead of me.
I'll make a motion to vote.
Okay, Pat.
Ward 2.
Ward 2, great. Anyone want a second a vote from Ward 2? And
second.
Great, thank you, Stefan. And would anyone like to make the motion from Ward 3?
I'll make the motion from Ward 3 that we vote.
Thanks, Jess. Anyone?
And this Abbott Stark, I'll second the motion from Ward 3.
Great, thanks, Abbott. Sam, a poll has popped up on my window, but it seems to be for the funding proposals. Is there a difference?
Yeah, that was my fault. I tried to open up the proper poll, but I might have messed up. So I hope Sam can fix it.
Okay, I was very confused. Yes, I can do it. I'll pop them up right now.
Thanks, Sam. Great. So if everyone could go ahead and vote in just one of them, whichever ward that you live in, please go ahead and vote by your ward.
So I have to do them one at a time. So the Ward 2 one will be up first, and then we'll do the Ward 3.
Thanks, Sam. Okay, let's give people 10 more seconds to fill in the Ward 2 ballot. Okay, I think you can go ahead and close that one. It looks like Ward 2 is in support. Thank you, Ward 2. And we'll go ahead with Ward 3.
I'm not seeing the place to vote. Am I missing something? For Ward 3?
I believe a separate window should pop up asking if you'd like to vote, basically, somewhere on your computer.
I've got CETO NPAs. Is that the one?
Nope. There should be somewhere on like the bottom of your screen, there might be like another window for Zoom open, and that should be the poll option, I think.
I don't, I've got town meeting TV and the very bottom participants, share screen, record, raise hand. No, I don't have any place to, I haven't seen a poll.
Would you like to vote by voice, Tony?
Sure, I vote yes.
Okay, great. Anyone else need to voice vote or having technical issues? Okay, great. Well, it seems like Ward 3 has supported the bylaws as well. So we can go ahead and I think we can call those adopted, right? Excellent. Thank you, everybody. That will be great to have official bylaws. Mayumi, did you want to say something?
Yeah, I have to leave. I have something that I need to attend to, so I've got to leave a little early.
Okay, nice to see you.
Okay, bye.
Thank you, Mayumi.
Wonderful. Well, with that, we will move on to our next agenda item, which is Burlington Schools update. We gave the school board a bit of extra time this month because there's so many things going on in the city schools. So we'd love to hear an update from all the commissioners, and then maybe if you could save 10 minutes or so for questions, be nice to have time for NPA members to be able to ask their own questions. So does any one of the commissioners want to go first?
We didn't really talk about that, Molly.
Oh, we
We didn't
didn't?
say like who's gonna go first tonight, but we all do have a plan. So Stephen, Jeannie, would you like to go first?
Sure, I'll be very brief. I just want to thank the citizens of Burlington for voting yes on the budget. And once again, they've shown great support for the system and the district, and it's very much appreciated at the board level as it is at the citizen level. Entering the citizen level this time around, but so, and also today, it looks to me like there's good news regarding the pupil weighting study, because I think it's on its way to making a big difference in the way that schools are funded in the state. And I'm not sure exactly yet what that means financially in terms of numbers for Burlington, but we will find out soon because our director Director Lavery will give us a report on just what that will mean for Burlington. I think it's good news. I think that's true, Jeannie, isn't it?
It is, but it's not a done deal yet.
No, it isn't, but
But things are a lot more encouraging than they were when we started. God,
yes.
This has been so way over a year.
Yeah.
But not quite two.
And I know that, there's a big ask, everyone knows there's a big ask coming up in November. But I'm an optimist, and I believe that everyone in Burlington knows that we need a new high school, and it's been a long time coming. And we're at the phase now where it's gonna be an exciting time to be tuning in to board meetings, because the designs and the costs and the estimates and the discussions will be part of the agendas coming up probably as soon as next month. So it will be a big amount of money, but education is very expensive, and we're in great need of a new building and an appropriate building for the next 60, 70 years. So I'm convinced that Burlingtonians know that, and they will support it when the time comes. I do want to just emphasize that since I've been on the board, the discussion has always been focused on being fiscally responsible. And I know that will continue as we go forward with this new design, that there's no wasted money. There are no really extras, although I personally would like to see extras, a lot of extras. that we've proposed extremely conservative numbers in the last 4 years, and I'm certain that that will continue as well. So I'm just hoping that the citizens will understand the need and support the ask that's coming up in November. Thanks.
Okay, so kind of on the topic of numbers, I'll just preface by saying thanks to everyone who voted for me in Ward 3. I ran unopposed, but I still really appreciate every vote. I don't take it for granted that while my name's the only like super official name on the ballot, people still voted for me. So thank you. And I'm really excited about the plans for the new high school and tech center. And tonight, I wanted to focus on the question about the previous bond versus the upcoming bond. So I'm going to share my screen, and this is something from a front porch forum post that I put out this week to respond to my neighbor. Can you all see my screen? I'm going to go backwards. Sorry. Okay. Is this okay? Thumbs up? Yes?
Yeah.
Yes.
Right.
Okay. So I just want to clarify that the question came up, what was the exact amount approved by taxpayers at the time called BHS BTC re-envisioning back in 2018? And that amount was $70 million. And of that money, we borrowed 24 million. And how much of that 24 million has been spent so far? This was another question. Of the 24 million initially borrowed, 4 million was spent on design work and site testing, which was mandated by the state. And I think it's really important to understand this was not money where people said, oh, let's just take these $4 million and kind of play with it. This was actually something that had to happen as part of the process. And we found out that we had PCBs. So because of that, and the PCBs that exceeded state and federal levels, we shut down BHS. People worked very hard to get a new location so that students could be in person, which is now downtown BHS. And then they found locations around the region, mostly around Chittenden County, South Burlington and Burlington, so that tech center students could also work together in person. And the remaining $20 million was returned because we could not move forward with the project as planned. And then this question came up, how does bond funding work? And I have to admit, I've been on school board for 2 years. I've lived in Burlington officially since, well, I've lived in Ward 3 since 2006. I've lived in Burlington since 2000, yes, 2000, 1999, 2000. And I couldn't answer this question. I voted for many bonds and I couldn't really answer this question. So I asked Nate Lavery, the executive director of finance for the Burlington School District, and he said, it's a lot like paying a mortgage where you borrow a large amount of money and pay it back with interest over the term of the bond. And getting authority to borrow is not the same thing as actually borrowing it. So we don't have to get $70 million of approval and then take the $70 million. We borrow what we expect we're going to spend, which is a window of 12 to 18 months, typically. So have we been paying that $70 million? No, we're only repaying the $4 million because we returned the $20 million that was not spent. And will we have to pay the $70 million that we borrowed? We are not facing any costs of this authorization except repayment of the $4 million. So our budget, which is supported by people's taxes here in our community, is really only repaying the $4 million that were spent. As we look at BHS BTC 2025, what about this new high school and tech center, where we're going to be proposing a bond based on plans that we make over the next several months? And we're looking at hopefully that bond being proposed this coming November. For the new high school and tech center, we're going to make a completely new request so that the community has a clear grasp of the total borrowing necessary to complete the project. So that's the end of my slides. I'm going to stop sharing And I just wanted to clarify that tonight because there were a lot of questions about, well, what about the previous bond? And will money from the previous bond be added into the other one? How was that money spent? And to say that that hopefully covers it. And maybe if you hear those questions, you can go and say to the community, no, this is what I heard at the NPA meeting, which comes from the director of finance in the Burlington School District. I didn't make the numbers up. I asked him so that I could understand it. And that we are going to be looking for a new ask this coming November. And finally, that in my mind, I said this at a board meeting recently, not having a permanent high school and tech center is the biggest economic and existential crisis facing our community right now. It affects our identity. It affects whether or not people move here. It affects whether or not people decide to move out. So to me, this is like blinders on. I'm very single-minded about this. The most important thing for us to be thinking about in terms of how we are spending our money and what we're choosing to spend our money on. Like Stephen said, we're looking at this as an investment in the next 60 to 70 years, not something that's just another cycle. So I'll stop there because I know we need to leave time for questions.
Thanks, Polly. Let's see, Jeannie, did you want to say anything before we open it up for questions?
I really don't have anything else to add. I'm eager to answer questions though. Thanks, Molly.
Great. Questions? Who would like to follow up on that great report? Infinite. Go ahead.
Polly, thank you so much for that. You brought up that it was sort of like a mortgage. And so I guess I'm just curious if there is a way for us to know, not just the borrowing amount, but the debt service and the cost of the loan.
Thank you for your question. I cannot answer that question right now, but I'm going to write it down and I'm going to send it to the executive director of finance. I'm sure there's an answer to that, but it's not one that I could answer right now.
Well, eventually we will know. It's just not yet.
I know
And
that in discussion of the cost, there will be a projection of what the payback rate will be over the years that the loan is active. So the board will be public knowledge at upcoming board meetings.
Great. Thank you, folks.
And that process is actually beginning. April 5th will be our first, will be the board meeting where different scenarios or options are first introduced. As far as, you know, plans for what a building would, how it would serve the students and what would be the associated cost. But of course it's not, it will be within a margin, you know, it'll be bracketed by from here to here. At least that's my understanding. It not having happened yet, it's hard to know.
Ms. White, I live at 308 Negra Arroyo.
Somebody wants some mail.
I live at 308 Negra.
I think we're being
Albuquerque.
Zoom bombed again.
Walter Hartwell. I live at 8 Negra.
Booted.
Infinite, may I ask if your question about debt service was for the $4 million we're repaying or about the new high school and tech center or both?
Oh yeah, both.
Okay.
You know, I mean, because I agree with you. I think I agree that not having a high school is a crisis. I guess I'm wondering at what cost. You know, what the cost in the longer term, if that cost that will actually fall on, you know, our grandkids. To what extent, I guess.
there was a call at our board meeting last time, call by which I mean sort of like almost like a call to arms to say, this situation should not solely fall on the shoulders of Burlington taxpayers, and that the state of Vermont could do a lot better with funding education construction across the board, that this is a crisis we're facing now in Burlington, but we are not the only community. So I keep saying, like, let's put pressure on legislators, let's put pressure on the state. And the truth is that I don't really know how to do that. And I'm trying to figure that out and hoping to get those answers from people so that, you know, we hear about money coming in through ESSER funds and pandemic funds, or that Vermont could spend more on education construction, but doesn't. And I'd love to know more about how to go about getting that money so that it's not just falling on Burlington taxpayers to do this.
Just in reference to the ESSER fund comment, Polly, we've been told that 10 million has been set aside from the ESSER funds for the construction of the new high school. So it's a little bit toward the total cost. There's also been a lot of discussion on the side and publicly as well about soliciting private donations and private benefactors to help. I don't know how that's going or in what direction that's heading, but Tom Flanagan has said that several times, and I'm expecting that will be part of the funding mechanism.
Part of being able to accept those donations is having a tax exempt 501c3 entity or organization be a fiscal umbrella for that work. So, I mean, it sounds like that has already happened, and it's not just one entity. There's at least, there's more than one. I'm not sure how many there are though. So getting ready to receive is definitely a position we're in. And as I did speak with, it was a long time ago, I did speak with Director Labrie about what taxpayers were feeling in the repayment of the $4 million. And he said it was so small that we're talking maybe not even pennies, but it would be nice to have a concrete figure. And I don't know if that's changed, right? And that was before everybody got a reassessment. I'm not sure how much of that might be different now.
Any questions from the NPA?
I do also want to say the word on the street is that Governor Scott is going to earmark funds for technical schooling, half of the surplus, which I think is, or I'm not exactly sure how much he said. Maybe it's around 45 million. So I'm hoping that Burlington Technical Center will benefit from that effort, or the future Burlington Tech Center, I should say.
You realize that Stephen, Jeannie, and I are all teachers, and we could easily just fill this time with talking.
Yeah.
Like when there's a void, we're like, no, we'll find something to say. I want to say thank you to Stephen, who is stepping down as
me too.
Ward 2 school commissioner, for his service for the past 4 years. He has done so much work behind the scenes, and we are so grateful to him for everything that he's done. And although she's not here tonight, I'd like to welcome Faiza Hassan, who is the new Ward 2 school commissioner. And there was a great write-up recently in 7 Days about the new young school commissioners, one of whom is Faiza. So I just want to put that out there, and hopefully we will see her at an NPA meeting soon. So thank you, Stephen, and welcome Faiza, wherever you are tonight.
Thank you, Polly.
Yes, thank you, Stephen. That's a great note to wrap up on. Thank you for your years of service to the city. Great. Maybe we should move on to our city councilors. I see we have Councilor Mage and Councilor Tracy who have been with us for a while. We thought we'd give you guys about 5 minutes to give us an update, and I'll let you pick which one goes first.
Max, do you want to kick it off?
Sure. Yeah, that's cool. So this is my last NPA meeting with you all. After 10 years of being the Ward 2 City Councilor, I'm stepping aside and Jane Bergman's going to be taking over. So really, it's definitely a bittersweet time. So I'm just really grateful to all of you who have put so much time into running the NPA, making it such a special place to come every month and talk with folks about the issues facing our community. It's been really remarkable to see how you all have adapted to the pandemic and just keeping this tradition going. I'm also really excited to see you all again in person when we get back into having dinner again together. So I just wanted to kick things off by saying that and just really express my gratitude to all of you for everything that you do to keep this such a rich and informative meeting. In terms of council, I have one more council meeting left and at that meeting, one of the issues that's going to be discussed that will be impacting our neighborhood is the North Winooski project, or North Winooski Avenue. So this is been a years-long project where they've examined where DPW, different consultants, committee and different committees have looked at the entire span of Winooski Avenue and recommended changes for that. The corridor has already undergone some significant changes that you all have probably noticed, especially in downtown where they've gone from 4 lanes to 3 lanes. The area in the Old North End was sort of set aside with when that decision was made, it was sort of like that downtown section moved forward and then the Old North End section was broken off for further study and review. And that process and the committee that was working on that completed that process recently with a recommendation to do a pilot and to do further study. That is going to be, and so that's what came out of it. And that comes to the city council for further discussion and the city council to weigh in. That'll be on the 21st. And so we're still just going to be discussing and looking at those different options. I personally don't like the idea of doing a pilot. We saw the drawbacks of doing a pilot with North Avenue. Didn't really, I don't think that it really gave us any, different or new information that we didn't have ultimately at the beginning of the process. And I think that it just allowed the issue, it just let the issue become one that was just continue to let the issue become incredibly polarizing. So I think we're going to be looking at we're going to continue to look at a variety of different options going forward for the Winooski corridor and at that meeting. So if you are interested in that topic, I would encourage folks to attend that council meeting on the 21st. And so that's kind of the big item that I wanted to just bring back to the group at this meeting. But I'll let Joe talk a little bit more because I'm sure there's other things we got to talk about as well to update you.
Yeah, so I just want to thank everybody for showing strong support on town meeting day. I'm very grateful to have the support of Ward 3 residents for a full 2-year term and looking forward to working with you all. And like Max said, joining some in-person NPAs here hopefully soon. So just wanted to say thank you for that. And also thank you to Max for 10 years of service to the city and for his leadership as I've been on the council since August. So I wanted to touch briefly on short-term rentals as we heard some folks comment on during the public forum. The mayor is still considering a veto of the ordinance as it was passed by the council in an 8-4 vote on our meeting on February 23rd. So he has until the meeting on the 21st to make that decision. He hasn't said definitively whether or not that's something that he's going to do, but that could be something that we also address at that meeting on the 21st. So, I heard Abbott's comments and others' comments on that, and just want folks to know that I'm here to continue to have those conversations as folks consider those proposals and what the council passed in February. So with that, I think we can open it up for some questions. I don't know if we have other reps here to speak tonight.
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, it looks like we don't have any state reps, so I would offer that we should go until 8:30 with peppering city councilors with questions, and yeah, let's open it up for people to chime in. We have an end of meeting lull. Oh, there we go. Patrick, what do you want to say?
Good job, Mr. McGee. You did a tremendous job of running, and you're doing a great job as council, even though I can't vote for you. I've already spoken to previous and hopefully future council members about economic justice on the city council, and a pay scale that reflects currently what the councilor makes. We don't have a huge diversity of economic inclusion on the city council. We spend a lot of time, making sure, trying to make the city council representative of the city visually, but economically, I have a tough time thinking that it's a balanced and fair city council. Approaching that is very difficult, and I think Max briefly noted a couple things years ago when I mentioned it to him. I really feel that people of economic challenges should be represented. Most of the city councilors, all of them, do a good job of trying to, but it's one thing representing somebody and the other thing representing from a place of knowing. How that would work, it could be very difficult, but I really feel like it would benefit the city tremendously if we offered childcare to people on the school board, other committees, some minor benefits, acknowledgement of a lot of hard work, and a serious stipend to city councilors if they're economically challenged. But good job, Max. Thank you.
Thanks, Patrick. And one of the things I can say is that there is still an active charter change to increase counselor pay. That's still very much active. It was just tabled. So there is a proposal to do that. Whether it has support, I think is an open question at this point, to be frank. I think it's one of those things that people kind of turn into a referendum on, the council that is there currently and how they feel about that particular council. And they don't see it sort of through, I think, the important lens that you're applying, Patrick, which is that, in order to have people be able to serve, you have to, or at least a wide range of people being able to serve, you have to compensate them, because it's a tremendous amount of work and an incredible commitment in terms of your time. And a lot of working class people just simply don't have the time and ability to do that for the compensation that counselors are currently paid. If folks don't know, we're paid about $385 a month. And that translates to, well less than minimum wage for the amount of time you put in. So, and that was increased since I've been on the council. So it's not necessarily what I think people do it for, but it is an important thing that I think influences people's ability to get involved and stay involved.
Yeah, and if I could just say quickly, Patrick, I think that point about childcare is essential. These are meetings that happen late and go late into the night, and I think that's absolutely something that we should be looking into, as we address the childcare concerns in the whole city and in the state, how we open this up for working folks to be able to serve on bodies that meet largely after working hours.
Charlie, would you like to go ahead?
Me? Yes. Max, thanks for everything. Done a lot of good stuff. Tried a lot of good stuff. We, I think of the mayor as Vito. You know, that's his character. If it's not a what do they develop? If it's not a development, it gets a veto. Joe, congratulations. I'm glad we got you back. And I wish everybody luck in getting places with these things. It's very difficult, and it does take a lot of time, and it's really a lot to ask of someone to put in that much time for that much money.
Thanks, Charlie.
Yeah, that just about says it. Thank you both. And thank you all.
Charlie. Thanks, Charlie. You've had some of the most memorable public comments in the entire time I've been on city council. So I've always appreciated that.
Thanks.
Jeannie, would you like to go ahead?
Yeah, on the topic of compensation for serving, just to let you know, the school board has talked about stuff like that as a strategy to diversify the board. But one of my questions is in, being somebody who has low income and also being somebody who is the money that you guys receive, is it non-taxable? So, and I bring this up because certain incomes can affect people's benefits. It would be horrible to have this offer out there on the table, but somebody not be able to take it because that means that they're gonna lose out on, much more food stamps. Or I know that that's fairly unlikely, but it's such a pain in the butt to get all of those systems in place and then to, 2 years later, even reapply or something. I'm curious as to if it's a stipend, is it taxable?
It's funny you asked that, Jeannie, because I actually emailed HR today to get my W-2 because they sent it to my old address. So it is taxable.
Okay.
So, yeah.
Figures.
Barbara.
Yeah, I just want to, number one, congratulate Joe. I'm so glad to have you in a more permanent slot, and to tell Max that I really understand all your reasons for leaving. They're good, valid reasons, but I am not over my disappointment. I had such hopes for you being the next mayor. I understand that could possibly still happen, but you were such a terrific counselor and such a terrific council chair. I understand, but I'm really sad that you're going.
Well, thank you so much, Barbara, and really appreciate all your support.
I think that if we were in person, this meeting would probably end with a standing ovation of Max for his years of service and really dedication to the NPA. I've always appreciated how you show up to all of our meetings and really have that good advice. Yeah, so let's all give Max an appreciation.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Great. Well, with that, I think we can wrap up our meeting. It's been a pleasure getting to see all of you, and I look forward to meeting with you in April.